Greetings. My name is Harry Kazianis, and I serve as managing editor here at the National Interest at the Center for the National Interest. Today I have a good friend of mine here in the office. We're going to talk about quite a few things that National Interest readers are always asking more questions about. This is Dustin Walker. Dustin is the editor of Real Clear Defense, an extremely popular defense website. Carries a lot of national interest articles, I might add, which is very wonderful. Plus, Dustin is an expert on many different things in the defense realm. So, Dustin, I want to kind of get your quick reaction to start out. Everything on Ebola is obviously a very hot topic, and for various obvious reasons. So, obviously, I know you're no expert on the subject, but I want to get just sort of a quick reaction. How do you think President Obama is doing with his Ebola strategy? What do you see could be possible changes? Just a quick reaction, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. And I think here we've seen a pattern unfold that has come up on a lot of other issues, which is that overall the executive branch was a little bit slow here. The protocols weren't quite right at the beginning, and they had to make a lot of adjustments. And the cases in Texas, it now appears, happened pretty much, they shouldn't have happened if we had had the protocols right from the beginning. It seems like we're fixing that, we're sort of getting up to speed. Now there are these little controversies bubbling up about should we be automatically quarantining health workers that are coming back from Africa here? Is that going to be a deterrent for people to actually go and address the epidemic where it is and where it's actually a threat? But ultimately it seems like politics is making its way into this now, and you've seen this with what's happened with Governor Christie and Governor Cuomo and sort of having a very strict quarantine. But ultimately it seems like pretty much everyone's saying the same thing, they're just not admitting it, which is that basically these folks are going to have to come back to the United States, self-quarantine at home, monitor their symptoms very carefully. If they become symptomatic, then they're going to have to be hospitalized. I think it's how that's going to go. So as long as, I think the federal government at some point is going to have to come out here, establish some very clear guidelines for the states to follow, because it's sort of a hodgepodge of protocol here is probably not going to work, and it's going to leave us, I think, at more risk than we need to be.
Okay, that's fair enough. So, turning to a completely different subject, let's talk a little F-35.
Sure.
Always a very hot topic on the National Interest website, and I'm sure Real Clear Defense.
Yeah.
In your opinion, where do you see the program right now? It's obviously had some problems, but it's had some successes that I don't think really have sort of gotten the news. Where do you see the program going? Do you think it'll ultimately be a success, a failure? Just kind of give us your general reaction so far and how things have gone.
Well, I think in my time following this debate, what I've noticed is that increasingly the argument is sort of only about the genesis of this program. It's really about whether it was a good idea in the first place, whether it was a good idea to have a joint fighter program. The only sort of current issue that really comes up is the expense of this program. And quite frankly, it seems like no matter what you think of it, it has demonstrated its resilience and demonstrated its strength. I mean, we just had this incident over the summer where there was a fire in June and it grounded the test fleet and all that. There were no real moves from Congress or anyone in the Pentagon to try to change the size of this program, to make cutbacks, pause here or there. There really wasn't a lot of movement on that, and I think that ultimately the reason is because the die is cast. This is going to be the future of our fighter fleet, whether we like it or not. And we're just going to have to make the best of it. Now, the thing that is somewhat encouraging is that as time has gone on and we've done these additional batches of fighter buys, the cost seems to be coming down a little bit. We're getting a little bit better of a hold about what the sustainment costs are going to look like and how we might be able to manage that. We've got a number of milestones coming up that it appears that we're on track to meet, and hopefully the Marines will be able to hit their initial operating capability on time. We'll see if that happens. But I come back to what I say, at the end of the day, the F-35 is going to be the future. And it would seem to me that it would take something pretty catastrophic to have Capitol Hill and all of the 45 states that have direct interest in the building of this program to do something to radically reverse course. That seems very unlikely to me.
Okay, sounds like a good plan. So moving on to the almighty pivot to Asia, which is, I know, something that is very much that you like to talk about. You had a very popular article on TNI's website a couple months back. In your view, where do you see the pivot today? Do you consider it a success, a failure? just right, going in the right direction? Give us your take.
Well, when I wrote the article, I tried to lay out the fact that the pivot is, obviously it's not just one thing. It has sort of three distinct elements to it: diplomatic, economic, and military. I think on the diplomatic side, we've been fairly successful. Since sort of 2009, 2010, when the Chinese began a little bit more of a pattern of aggressive behavior, our diplomacy has adjusted quite well to this. We've stepped in to talk to our allies and assure them that we're there to back them up, and that we're not going to let China solve these territorial disputes and other kinds of disputes through coercion and force. We've had new openings with the Philippines, with Vietnam now is interesting. Relations with Indonesia seem to be improving. So there's been a lot of diplomatic successes. On the economic front, which is actually supposed to be arguably the biggest part of this, unfortunately, that part has come up very short. And the main reason is that we have failed to move the Trans-Pacific Partnership forward. That's the large free trade agreement that is supposed to sort of cement us at the center of Asia's economy here. And unfortunately, that's fallen victim to politics. And we've seen in the Democratic Senate, even though this is President Obama's rebalance to Asia, that bill's gone nowhere. The Trade Promotion Authority that is absolutely necessary in order to get that agreement has gone nowhere in the Democratic Senate. And I think it will have to pass if the pivot is going to be counted as a success. Perhaps with the upcoming elections, a change that might happen there. Perhaps the Republican Senate may be more likely to move that authority. It's politically dicey. It's probably not going to be their top priority, but maybe if that gets through, we'll see some progress on the economic side. And then on the military side, I don't think that a significant military buildup was ever really intended to be the purpose of the rebalance. Any shift that we made was always going to be somewhat subtle. It's more about sort of maintaining our presence, making sure that when we do move assets to the Asia Pacific, that we're moving our more advanced and capable assets, better cruisers, better destroyers, better radars, which is some of what we've been doing now. And sort of enhancing our partnership capacity with countries like Australia and Japan. And we've, for the most part, been doing that. The thing that concerns me is it's two things. One is sort of our long-term defense posture in the Asia Pacific and how that's going to be affected by 10 years of $1 trillion in defense cuts. And this is the part that has been somewhat frustrating from the administration's point of view, which is they obviously have a diplomatic incentive to go and tell countries in the Asia Pacific, we're going to be here no matter what. And that's understandable. But the reality is that our defense posture is not going to look the same in Asia no matter how much we try. If the Navy shrinks from 283 ships or whatever it is right now down to 250, 240, 230, the 60% of our fleet benchmark that we have set for that's our demonstration of how committed we are. 60% of 283 is a lot different than 60% of 230. And it also means that we might not necessarily be able to invest in the advanced assets that we want to have there in the future. So that part of it worries me, and I haven't, obviously because sequestration is continuing, I haven't heard what the resolution of that is actually supposed to be, how this is going to look in the long term. But the second part of it is beyond the military posture, because at the end of the day, it's not even about the particular assets that we have. What it's really about is being able to convey American will and American resolve, and to make sure that a country like China knows what we mean when we say it, and that they really believe us, and that they don't think that they can sort of cause a situation where we're going to back out of our commitments. Mm-hmm. And that's the more alarming part, because even right now, when I think most people would say that our military posture is pretty robust. We can handle a lot of contingencies in the Asia Pacific, even with China right now. The problem isn't our capability, it's our will. And that's the part that increasingly you see some China scholars writing articles about how folks within the Chinese military don't really think that we're going to stick. Mm-hmm. That if it comes down to it, a destroyer gets sunk, a carrier gets hit by a missile, there's a lot of American lives suddenly on the line, that we're not going to want to do that. We're not going to want to fight over the Senkaku Islands. We're not going to want to fight over a reef in the South China Sea. So that's the part I think we need to work on. And ultimately, I think the rebalance will be judged by that part. Does it convey that America means to stay in the Asia Pacific, that it means to defend the allies we've committed to? If we do that, it'll be a success. If that message is not received in Beijing, it'll be a failure.
Fair enough, fair enough. So my final question for you, let's turn from Asia to the Middle East.
Sure.
So talking about ISIS, just all of the different things that are going on involving them in Iraq and Syria, does the Obama administration have the right strategy? There's a lot of talk about maybe trying to contain ISIS instead of, degrading and destroying. It seems very hard to destroy something like ISIS, even though they've tried to morph themselves into a caliphate. They're still based on, an idea or, in that respect. So does the Obama administration have the right strategy? Does it need to be tweaked? What do you think?
Well, I mean, if strategy is the way that you take military means and you use them to achieve political objectives, I don't really see how the Obama administration strategy is supposed to work here, because right now they're saying degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL. But the military means that have been laid out so far, and the ones that have been ruled out by the administration, suggest that destroying ISIS is not really on the table, at least as far as what we're going to do. Somehow that goal depends on a mysterious land force is going to appear out of nowhere, is going to go into major cities like Mosul and remove these guys. And also, that's just in Iraq. Somehow that's also going to happen in Syria. And if you look at all the candidates for this, I think we just don't see it. The Iraqi army has a reputation for retreat, if nothing else. It still has rampant corruption. The officer corps is not trusted. That has not gotten any better, really, under the new prime minister, under the new leadership in Baghdad. The Iraqi Kurds, the Peshmerga, though they're really great fighters, it still does not appear that they're going to be capable of going into really close, tough, urban combat to force out ISIS fighters that can blend into the population in a big city like Mosul. So somewhere along the line, if it's going to be the Peshmerga that are going to do this in Iraq, even there you're going to have to see some kind of U.S. advisory role, I would think, and probably a robust one if that's going to succeed. And then you go to Syria. It may be the case that 2 years ago there was a significant number of so-called moderate Syrian rebels that may have been willing to fight on our side against ISIS. Now, I think, all of the reporting I read, coming out of there about the situation on the ground is that those forces, if they ever existed, just really aren't there in numbers anymore. They've long since gone over to other militant groups who had been able to demonstrate that they were able to get weapons that they could actually fight and win battles. Not ISIS necessarily, but groups like Jabhat al-Nusra. And the other part of this is that the Assad regime has been very effective in their basic strategic gambit, which is they're going to ignore the Islamic State and they're going to focus their attention only on these moderate rebels, because they know if they can get rid of them, that what they're going to force the West to do is choose between the Assad regime and the Islamic State, which is, it's going to be a terrible choice for us. And they've been pretty effective in doing it, unfortunately. So, and even under the best case scenario of what the administration has laid out so far, is that we might, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, be able to train 5,000, moderate Syrian rebels to actually fight. And we're expecting them, by the way, to then go into Syria and ignore who their primary enemy is, the Assad regime, and to fight against ISIS. So I think you just have a basic strategic disconnect. We outlined a very broad goal of destroying ISIS that I don't really know is achievable, at least under the current circumstances and how we've articulated this. The best thing I think we can hope for right now is to somehow restore the territorial integrity of Iraq. That's probably going to require U.S. advisors at the very least on the front line, helping to coordinate these forces and to advise them on how to do more complicated things like urban warfare that we've talked about. And then from there be able to prevent ISIS from threatening the countries around Syria, and to prevent them from conducting long-term planning for attacks elsewhere. I think that's something we could do. Even that's going to take a long time. So we'll see. I think that you can tell that within the military leadership that they are already eyeing an expanded role for the United States in Iraq at the very least. So I think you'll see that gradually that will become more of the focus, and then you'll see our role expand.
Excellent. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there. My name is Harry Kasianis, and I've been speaking with Dustin Walker, the editor of Real Clear Defense. You have a great day.